Now joining us on the program, former general manager with the Washington Redskins and the Houston Texans. Now he's with the NFL CBS Today as their NFL insider. That's Charley Casserly. Charlie, Zach Gelb here, Showvio.com. Thank you for joining me. How you doing this evening?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing great myself. NFL schedule came out last night. Hopefully we have a season next year, but do you believe this whole scheduling notion that the league put out there basically saying, oh, you know what, we'll put a lot of marquee matchups out there game one to put the pressure on the players to basically show the fans that, hey, we care, we want to have a week one, now it's up to the players?
No, I think they just put it out. Normally, this is the time of year they do it. They're going to put it out assuming there's a season uninterrupted, and certainly there could be a season uninterrupted. So I don't think it was any psychology to put pressure on the players.
Now give me an update on the lockout. What's the latest you're hearing?
Well, the judge adjourned until the middle of May, which just, of course, slows the process down. Means she's not going to make a ruling until then, and maybe not even then. Whoever loses this ruling, and the general consensus is that the players will win the first ruling, then there'll be an appeal that'll go to the 8th Circuit in St. Louis, and of course both sides think they'll win there. So right now, that St. Louis decision will basically take about 2 months from the Minneapolis decision, so now you're talking in July, the earliest, before we have, quote, a final decision, and even there, we still wouldn't have a deal at that point in time.
Now, when you were with the Washington Redskins, you guys had replacement players playing with you, and it eventually went to a movie, actually, where they had that big matchup against the Dallas Cowboys. Is this league looking at replacement players if they can't get the real players on the field come week one?
No, you won't see replacement players because back then, the players walked out and the gates were open. Anybody could walk in and play at that point. Now, the gates are closed. If the owners were to open them up, then the players would certainly walk back in. That's what the players want to do. They want to be able to walk back in and play under a system that is not approved. Therefore, they can play, earn money, and sue. So there will not be replacement players this time. It's a different situation.
Now, how realistic was that movie, The Replacements? Did you really have Chinese guys going around the field throwing up the eggs that they ate in the morning? Did you ever think to yourself when you're overseeing this, oh my God, what are we doing here? We're not going to win a game.
Well, no, I think that, first of all, the overall concept of the movie is true. The Redskins, they call them the Washington Sentinels, did beat the Dallas Cowboys. We were a team that didn't have anybody cross the picket line. There were a few similarities on some of the players in a broad sense. But so in the big picture, it was accurate. The details obviously were fictitious in many ways. But when we put together the strike team in '87, we had absolutely no idea what to expect. First game was against the Cardinals of St. Louis. 14 players crossed the picket line. We were, I was scared of that. We had no idea what was going to happen. But we turned out, we won the game. We beat the Giants the next week, who I don't know if they had anybody cross at that point. Eventually they did. And then we beat the Cowboys in the third game, and they had a number of players cross. We never had one player cross. And that's part of the reason we won, because our guys were motivated, played as a team. I think some of those other teams were not as motivated to play as our kids were.
Now we're talking to Charley Casserly, NFL CBS Today insider. And Charlie, let's take it through a general manager perspective. How serious, when you're looking and evaluating Cam Newton, are you taking under consideration what happened in the past with his father and all the allegations that he took money to play college football?
Well, I think you have to look beyond that, too. In fact, why he left the University of Florida. I mean, he failed I shouldn't say he was caught cheating multiple times. He was caught with a stolen computer. So, those are issues you have to get flushed out. Is it a lack of maturity, a lack of respect, lack of discipline? Is he grown up? All of those things are things that you have to work your way through. There's questions that you don't normally have to answer when you're talking about a player as considered as high as he in the draft.
Do you believe he has what it takes to perform at the NFL level as an NFL quarterback?
Well, he has the physical skills, but I think he's a long ways away from being a pro quarterback. The system he ran at Auburn is radically different than systems that are run in the National Football League. So there's going to be a tremendous adjustment he's going to have to make, both in a technique area as far as throwing properly with his feet, and also in reading defense, something that really wasn't asked much to do there.
Which quarterback in the draft stands out to you the best? Which one do you think is the most prolific passing quarterback in this draft? There's Newton, there's Gabbert, and as well as Jake Locker.
Well, Gabbert is, to me, the number one quarterback in this draft. I think he's got all the intangibles you're looking for, smart, leader, work habits. I think he'll be a good teammate. I think he'll be coachable. I think he's got an arm to make all the throws. I don't think he's quite at the par of some of the top guys like Sam Bradford, Matt Ryan, Matt Stafford, who've come out the last few years. But I think he's more talented than Mark Sanchez. I think the key with him will be development. In other words, you got a guy like Mark Sanchez, Joe Flacco. They go with teams, and even Matt Ryan, that run the ball, that take the pressure off him. So I think Gabbert is a prospect. I think he'll take some time, but I don't know why he can't be a good NFL quarterback.
Now, do you believe that Gabbert's going to be taken number one overall by the Carolina Panthers?
No, I don't think he'll go there. I think you can start looking at maybe Cincinnati at 4, Arizona at 5. That's where the possibility could be.
So now in your NFL mock draft, who do you have going number one?
Well, we haven't done it yet. That's next week. Ours isn't due till next week.
All right, sounds good. We're talking to Charley Casserly, former NFL general manager. And Charley, a lot of people in my generation, they know you for taking Mario Williams. What factored into that decision? Because you were getting a lot of pressure from the media, from fans to go with either Vince Young or Reggie Bush. What stood out in your mind from the pass rusher and Mario Williams?
Well, obviously, Bush was a talented player in college, and Vince Young was a talented player in college. But we were not going to take a quarterback that year in the draft, and besides that, we wouldn't have taken Vince Young. I didn't believe, in my mind, that Vince Young had the skills to be an NFL drop-back quarterback in a traditional offense. I think Bush was an exciting player, but was concerned about him being a full-time back. And you pick at that point for the first pick, you'll pay him $9 million a year. And it didn't make any sense to pay a back that you weren't convinced could be a full-time back $9 million a year. On top of that, Mario Williams was one of the best defensive ends I ever scouted, and I thought that he would be a terrific pro. So in my mind, it wasn't a complicated decision. And I think people that really knew Mario Williams felt the same way as we did.
No, as I said, you know a thing or two about drafting an NFL defensive lineman. What's your evaluation on Nick Fairley, and how does a player go from being a top 5 draft pick on some people's mock draft boards as the season concluded, now to being out of the top 10?
Well, we'll have to see if he's out of the top 10, but I think that needs play a role. If nobody else takes the defensive tackle in the top 10 except one team, then only one's going to go. So he may be faced with that more than anything. But there isn't anybody I have talked to in the process that rated him ahead of Marcel Darius. So that goes back to January. So I don't know why. If anybody had him over that, I'd have to get an explanation because nobody I talked to had it. Once I got a chance to study these guys, it was clear to me Darius was the better player. Fairley tends to play high. And that's where at times people may say he lacks effort, but when you play high, you get stuck on blocks, and it's hard to get off them. So also Darius, to me, can play nose tackle, defensive tackle, and defensive end, and only in a 34, not in a 4-3. So he has more position versatility.
Does a guy like Mark Ingram, does he concern you? A guy that won the Heisman Trophy his junior year, then he comes back for his senior year, and he has all kinds of knee problems. Are you going to be, if you were a general manager, looking to shy away from Ingram because of his injury past?
Well, people I've talked to medically feel he's going to be okay. I just evaluate him from this year as opposed to last year. I didn't see him a year ago. If I was making this decision for an NFL team, obviously I would have studied his tape a year ago. I think he's a good back. I think the best thing he does is put his foot in his ground, accelerate forward, make quick and instinctive decisions. I think in the Denver-type running scheme, I use that for Mike Shanahan, where it's one cut and go. I think the guy's a natural. I think he'd rush for 1,500 yards there. Not so sure how he would do in other schemes. I think he's a good back, but I think his scheme may help him to be a better back.
We're talking to Charley Casserly of the NFL Network, NFL CBS Today, former Redskins and Houston Texans general manager. And Charley, let's touch upon the locals here right quick. What are some areas of concern here heading into the draft for the New York Jets and the New York Giants?
Well, I think with the Jets, I'd like to see them get an outside pass rusher. They rush the pass well on scheme, but I don't see them rushing the passer real well on individual outside linebacker threats. So that would be one thing I think that they could help themselves there. Receiver they may have to look at because they got a number of guys that are free agents. Over with the Giants, linebackers the key need there. They really need to upgrade that, but it's not a good year to do that. So that would be probably one that I'm not sure they can help themselves with. Running backs a consideration and tight end only because they are free agents at those positions.
Now, I know you're not too close with Bill Belichick. You and him have had some pretty choice words over the past, but what do you see the Patriots doing? You can never predict what Belichick is doing, but he has an abundance of picks. What do the Patriots look to do with those four first and second round draft picks?
Well, I think one thing is they'll want to come out of this with something high for next year. Secondly, areas that they could help themselves with, defensive end, outside linebacker on the defense. And over on offense, I think they could use a running back. I think they could use a deep threat, a true change-the-game receiver. But I'm not sure they're going to have a chance to get somebody like that. In the offensive line, some concern at the guard and tackle area. They've got some free agency issues to deal with there. So, they have a number of needs there, but either way, this is a good football team. They won 14 games. They're going to be the team to beat in the AFC East again.
Charley, two more questions right before we let you go. In the MLB, there you have general managers that are 31 years old. They're so young. Do you believe the NFL is even close to having general managers that come out into the league at like the age of 30, 28, 32, at just such a young age?
Well, I'd never undersell anything. Howie Roseman, who's the young general manager at the Philadelphia Eagles, he's in his 30s. So it's not out of the realm of possibility to have a general manager in his 30s. You've had head coaches in their 30s who've been successful.
Now, Jerry Kramer, I want to just talk about this for 2 seconds. I had him on my show down at the Super Bowl on Radio Row, and he was just a phenomenal interview. I was watching some tapes on him. He was a hell of a player, and Jerry Kramer. How would one go about getting him into the National Football League Hall of Fame? Because it's just mind-boggling that when Jerry Kramer, one of the best offensive linemen in the history of the NFL, isn't in there.
Well, what happens is, and I guess there was a story in Sports Illustrated about Floyd Little, the running back from Denver, how one person took it upon himself to be the campaign manager and just never gave up writing sports writers on the committee with stats and analysis, and eventually his time came, and I don't have an answer to that because I'm not involved in that process. So we had a player with the Redskins, Chris Hamburger, who got in this year, went to more Pro Bowls than anybody in the history of the whole Washington Redskins franchise. I think he went to eight or nine, which in this year's class is more than anybody, including guys like Deion Sanders, who's in this class. So sometimes it takes time, and sometimes it takes somebody to be the standard bearer for them.
Charley, thank you so much for hopping on the show. Look to talk to you again in the future if there's an NFL season next year.
All right, great to be with you now.
Thank you.